Hey everyone, we're going to check out places like the US, Taiwan, Iceland, Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico, South America, Africa, Europe, and the Philippines, New Zealand, and more. We are going to do a sweep around the world and see what major events have taken place with earthquakes and volcanoes. Some crazy things are happening. We're going to check it out. Let's do this. Want to give you the update on all the global earthquakes that are going on and also information about the volcanoes. Now, we do have several volcanoes that have earthquakes not too far from them over in the Washington area. We also see some earthquakes in the British Columbia area, and they look pretty small, but still they did happen. There was a 2.2 that was in the Pacific Ocean. It was right off from Canada. And also we see some that are actually on the island, little sprinkled ones that are like 1.9, and we see one that's a 1.6. So there is some seismic activity that's actually happening in Canada. Now we also look over here, we see that there's some not too far from Alberta, in Dawson Creek, there was a 2.1, and we also see a 1.9 as well. Anything else to see? Anything else going on in Canada? Yes, in Ottawa. There was a 3.0 unconfirmed earthquake not too far from Sudbury, Ontario. And we also see another one. Ooh, look like that one has reports. A 3.4 happened 6 days ago in near Lebanon, near New Hampshire, USA. So there was an unconfirmed earthquake over in that area. Another unconfirmed earthquake was also in New York. It was a 3.4 near Vineland, New Jersey. It says New Jersey, but still, we'll go with that. There was also an earthquake in Arkansas at 2.8 3 days ago, a 3.1 in Oklahoma. And what's this over here in Tennessee area? It says Alabama. It was an unconfirmed 3.6 earthquake. Now, for the unconfirmed earthquakes, I highly advise you to look at our video that was on South Carolina and North Carolina. It gives you an idea about what an unconfirmed earthquake is, and also it gives you some stats as far as seeing how many unconfirmed earthquakes happened in the South Carolina and the North Carolina areas. So if you are from the US and we are having unconfirmed earthquakes everywhere in the US, all the way from California all the way to South Carolina, I highly advise you to look at that video, and I'll make sure it's in the description. Now, we also had some earthquakes in Oklahoma. There was a 3.1 about 8 hours ago. Woo, look like there's a lot more earthquakes once we get a little closer. Sprinkled throughout near Stillwater. Oklahoma City has had multiple earthquakes. One of them was 14 hours ago. It was a 2.4. Let's stay a little close into the U.S. so we can see what other earthquakes have actually happened. Arkansas had a 2.8 3 days ago. And let's take a look here. We can't forget to look up here. In Wyoming, there has been an earthquake not too far, several earthquakes near Yellowstone. There's small micro earthquakes. A 2.6 happened about 7 hours ago. And then you have these little baby ones that are here. One is a 0.9 13 hours ago. So there's a lot of small seismic activity that's happened. It's near Roaring Mountain in South White Peak, and they're not too far from Yellowstone. So just want to show you that those are happening. They're not really close, but they are close enough that we just want to make sure that you know what's going on. Now, there was one Yellowstone, it was a zero point 0.9 and it happened about 3 days ago. And let's see what else is going on. Nothing else is going on in this area except for some baby earthquakes here at zero point 0.9 in Utah, and also 1.6 in Utah. And also there was a 3. Oh, look at that. Another unconfirmed earthquake in Salt Lake City. It was a 3.0. And like we stated in our study, if you look at the North Carolina and South Carolina video that talks about unconfirmed earthquakes, which I highly recommend for everyone in the States and also around the world, because these type of earthquakes are happening everywhere. You have Utah also had some baby micro earthquakes in 2.2 that was about 6 days ago. Now let's look at California. California has had their share of earthquakes. Petrolia, California. This was an area that was very active during the La Palma era, and we just want to make sure that anything that happened during the La Palma era, we're going to identify on this channel. Eureka was another area that happened. Humboldt Hill area was another area. Ferndale was another area. So we'll just keep a look on this area here. If it starts to get out of hand, always look towards La Palma and see what else is going on in the world. Now, you know, the geothermal plant that's out here providing electricity is generating quite a few earthquakes. I don't know why, but for some reason this particular area is really hot and heavy. Now this is a volcanic area because Clear Lake is not too far from it. And there's geysers and all kinds of things that are in this particular area. Even there's a city place called Geyserville. So this goes to show you this area here is volcanic. Okay? Because even all the way to Cobb, California, they are actually having earthquakes, and that plant is all in that particular area. Now in the Bay Area, there are earthquakes that has happened. In San Francisco there was a 2.3 about 5 days ago. Some look like they're in near Walnut Creek and Berkeley area. They had a 1.9 7 days ago. In Concord area, in Pleasant Hill area, they had a 1.2. So there's some micro earthquakes that are in this area. Now it appears there was a chemical explosion in California, in Mountain House, California. And it looks like, so far it looks like it was just one. It was a 1.9. I don't know what the story of that is, but there was a chemical explosion that happened in Mountain House, California. Now, let's just keep going. We see that there's some micros. There's some very small earthquakes. However, they are earthquakes that happen in Los Altos Hills. And this looks like there was more than one in Alum Rock. So it actually showed me the 0.9, but there looks like earlier in the week there was actually another one that happened in Alum Rock, and that was a 3.4 that happened 2 days ago. Now let's check and see about California, see what other things are micros in this area. Mountain View has some micros. It had a 1.8 2 days ago. Gilroy area looked like they had a couple of these. They had a 2.4 that happened 3 days ago. There are reports on that particular earthquake. If I get a little closer, you'll see that there's more than one here. There's small ones here, 2.6 3 days ago. And it looks like something less than a 1 that's right here in this area here. We'll keep going. Now we see that along the fault line, there are definitely earthquakes. Not too far from the Pinnacles National Park, there was one here that was a 1.8 that was about 5 hours ago that just recently happened. But you can see there are earthquakes that are alongside the actual fault line, which is the San Andreas fault line. Bakersfield looks a little clear. There were earthquakes over in this area here that was in Bodfish, California. Look like there's multiple ones that are actually in that same area. This happened 3 days ago, but if you get a little closer, you can see that there's multiple earthquakes near Libel Peak and Moreland Mill. and we'll have to check and see if that is an actual area that used to have earthquakes. There was a 1.3 in Lake Isabella, and you can see that there's some micros all throughout this area, especially in Gorman. Wow, I remember driving through Gorman. There's a lot of truckers that go through that area. You guys be careful, be safe, and just know that they are experiencing small earthquakes in that area. Los Padres National Forest had a 1.5 19 hours ago. Now, as we get down into the San Bernardino and also the Los Angeles area, we can see that there's quite a few micro earthquakes that are happening. Your Kuiper had a 2.5. I'm sure people felt that. A 1.6 in Seal Beach, knowing that I actually was in Long Beach for quite some time. Hawthorne, California had a 1.5 6 days ago, and we could see that over in the Salton Sea area there are quite a few earthquakes in the Anza Borrego Desert Park area. I want you to know it's not listed on this particular map, but this area was volcanic at one time. So just want to let people know. Chula Vista area did have an earthquake that was a 1.5 about 12 hours ago. And let's see, there's all kinds of sprinkles down here in Tijuana area in Baja California. There was a 3.2. Thank goodness it's not unconfirmed. Now let's take a look and see here. Anything else we missed here? Oklahoma had a 3.1 about 8 hours ago. And just want to check and make sure we didn't miss anything. Alabama had the 3.6 unconfirmed. Like I said, all these unconfirmed earthquakes, you really need to take a look at the actual earthquake that happened during the time of 2021 and 2022, all the way up to around the 19th of August. That's in our report for North Carolina and also South Carolina. You need to really see what they have experienced. And some of those earthquakes were actually in Georgia and also in Alabama. So please, and Tennessee. So make sure you check those out. Now, it looked like a big one happened. A 3.9 happened in Baja California. And you can see that in that thermal area, that the geothermal area that has underwater volcanoes, actually, that they're not talking about, there was a 4.1 about just 5 hours ago. And also there was one that was right above it, and we'll check and see what that was. That one there was a 3.6. Now remember, the white lines are fault lines, and the blue lines are actually divergent lines. Divergent is where the earth spreads, and right here is where it actually rubs together. And we'll keep going. There will be another video that'll talk about divergent and convergent lines, so that way you can get a clear understanding of how the tectonic plates can actually move based on ridge earthquakes, earth ridge earthquakes. Like there's certain ridges like the Atlantic Ridge right now that's receiving a lot of earthquakes, and the Reconnaissance area also is getting earthquakes, and that could make the earth actually start having the plates shift, and that's also in relation to what people call the pole shift. So you really do want to look at that. Now, right along here in the convergent line area, you can see that there are multiple earthquakes clusters that are right here in Mexico, and there's quite a few. I mean, there's a 3.7 there. We can go through some of these for the people that live there. The 3.5, 9 hours ago. 3.5 also about 3 days ago. Some of these that are in Michoacan area here in Mexico are actually aftershocks. We'll take a look at that in a second, but let's go ahead and continue to look at the map. There's a lot of stuff to cover. All throughout Mexico along this red line here, that is actually a convergent line where there's actually a subduction going on. Part of this is a plate here, part plate here. It may be going under the actual plate that's located here. We'll talk about that in the next video. Also, you can see in Nicaragua, Panama, Guatemala, it is nothing but earthquakes all in this area. There's even earthquakes that are right here by the volcanoes. Now you also see that some of these volcanoes are actually erupting. Sorry, my nose is stuffed up. Fuego, and you saw the other one, and you saw Messiah. These volcanoes are actually going off right now. Also, you can see here in Honduras, there is a cluster right here in Honduras. One of the recent ones they had was about 8 hours ago. It was a 4.2 that happened in this particular area. Now, you can also see that it's all the way down in Costa Rica. So we're just going down the line, the actual convergent line where it is a subduction here, and we'll show you the plates it's doing that in the next video. So make sure you look at the next video and see what is actually happening. Now, there was a 3.1 that was about 14 hours ago in Panama. And as you can see here, all in this area here is just nothing but clusters. Colombia had a 1.7. They have a lot of micros, a 1.1 in Colombia. And you can see here a 1.6. There's just so many to go through. Look like there's a big cluster over here, 2.0 in Colombia. Looks as though that this one particular area that is really getting slammed right now. And we'll have to check into this, a 1.7, 2.0, 2.2 7 hours ago. So yes, it's still ongoing. We're showing all the earthquakes that have occurred for the last 7 days or so. So we're going to be able to see quite a bit of action that's taking place. We have actually a 4.0 2 days ago in the Amazonas, and that was in Colombia. We also see earthquakes that are actually occurring right by an erupting volcano. And you can actually see that this one here is the Reventador. This has been ongoing, erupting for a while now. And we also see, Sangay is actually erupting. Now, a few days ago, they had a 4.0. Oh, so that was just an hour ago. However, there was one a few days ago that happened. It was a 5.0 in this area in Peru, which is really, really big. But recently, they did have the 4.0 that was an hour ago. Now, Peru has had a 4.3. They've had one offshore. Also along here, they have actually had some that are offshore. This right here is a 4.0 that just happened 7 hours ago. Now, if we look up, we want to make sure that we don't miss anything on that side. You notice there's very seldom an earthquake in that area. But over here in the Chile area, oh my goodness. There's so many earthquakes that are right here by the volcanoes. If someone wanted to make these volcanoes go off and actually had control of earthquakes, they are definitely doing a good job over here, because look at this. It's all the way down. Even offshore by the actual convergent line that is red right here. And that, once again, there are plates here that are actually going underneath the North American plate. And that's what they call a subduction zone. Now, it looked like they had a huge one. It was a 6.1 7 days ago in Chile. Now, our next video is going to cover all these earthquakes that are happening along the ridges. You can see here in the Sandwich Islands that 2 days ago they had a 6.5. This is very important because this is where the tectonic plates actually end and start. This is where the edges are of different plates, tectonic plates. And that's what people talk about when they talk about the pole shift. They're talking about the plates actually rearranging. At one time, we were one supercontinent, and we have actually broken off into separate continents, different continents, because of the different earthquakes and volcanoes that took place, and because the actual plates have moved. Now we had a 4.7 in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. These ridge earthquakes are very important. And you can see that there's multiple earthquakes that are actually there. So it's more than one. 4.7 5 days ago, 4.9 5 days ago. Basically, this is going to be the part one video to what we're talking about. 4.7 6 days ago. 5.1 3 days ago. The Azores are actually getting earthquakes right now. I mean, sorry, that's Portugal. They're actually getting earthquakes right now that are actually right here by volcanoes. Now there are two under warning at this time. Instead of one, now there's two. So they're under unrest at this particular time. Now, if we go ahead and go to the other areas that's in this area, we'll look at Africa as we always do. We'll see that there is an earthquake here. It's unconfirmed. Africa, if you're in Africa, you really need to look at the South Carolina and North Carolina unconfirmed report that we have, because it's going to give you a lot of insights to unconfirmed earthquakes. Now let's go a little bit closer and see what other areas are being affected by earthquakes. When we look in the La Palma area, we can see that La Palma is actually getting earthquakes still right by its volcano. I guess the earth just happens to know where things are vulnerable, and that's where the earthquakes are happening. Tenerife, I heard this is actually worse than La Palma. They're getting earthquakes offshore. Hopefully that's not messing with any magma chambers that are out there that would feed this particular volcano. And also with these that are collected here, there are earthquakes here. There are never an earthquake on this particular island for some reason. And it does have a volcano. Even the other surrounding, it's just these two right here that are actually having earthquakes. Now let's go ahead and raise up and see what other earthquakes are going on. Otherwise, Africa is pretty much clear. They have had more than one. They had 3.2 about 9 hours ago. Also, Madagascar seem like they're doing okay. It's just that they have two volcanoes that's on unrest. There is actually one erupting out there. Just want to show that to you. And also you still have one up here that is also erupting, and that's near Ethiopia. That one right there is Ertael or Ertaele. And you also have, oh gosh, please forgive me for not even attempting to pronounce that one. But this one is a very well-known volcano that has done a lot of damage. Just want to show you that. Now, offshore in Portugal, they are actually having earthquakes still. You see a 3.7 that happened about 5 hours ago. And you also see one that happened 3.4. Now, in this particular area, the Azores, just want to let you know, they have two that are actually on unrest. And they also have earthquakes in this area. And in addition to that, you have, wow, you have a lot of earthquakes. You have a lot of volcanoes, excuse me, out here. But there is an actual fracture zone area here. This is like a fault line. So all of these earthquakes here fall on that fault line. Just want to make sure you see that. Now, Portugal, they're not having too many on land, but Spain is. They do have, majority of their earthquakes are actually right here offshore. But in Spain, you can see that they've had clusters of earthquakes. They're small, but they are there. Now, the Alborán Sea at Alhosima is still getting earthquakes. And there are major fracture zones in this particular area. There's multiple fracture zones in this area. They're not listed on the map, but we did cover that in the Alborán video previously. We actually showed all the different fracture zones. Spain has a cluster that's in this area, 1.6 about 1 hour ago. And then you can see here 22 hours ago at 3.9. I'm sure people felt that. I actually see reports for that. And you had a 2.1 22 hours ago. So within the last 24 hours, they have been receiving earthquakes. Now, when we go over in this area, we see that there's also an earthquake in Spain. Spain has been, there's even earthquakes all in this area here. So they are receiving earthquakes in Spain. Let's see, is Algeria nowhere up here? Okay, nowhere is getting earthquakes now in the last 7 days. That's great. Now, as we go up to France, France is still getting earthquakes all over the place. Looked like the largest one was here. It was a 4.7 about 4 days ago. Otherwise, they have 1.7, 2.6. Excuse my nose. My nose is stuffed up. 1.5, 21 hours ago. Switzerland has been pulverized with little clusters all over the place. Italy, Liechtenstein, 2.0 about 10 hours ago. And you can see Luxembourg has even had an earthquake that was, it was a quarry blast about 2 days ago, which generated a 1.8. Germany has had earthquakes. It was a 2.3 and 2.0 in this area here. Let's make sure that the UK is doing okay. Look like they are doing okay. They've had one, a 1.9, and we can see Stockholm over in Sweden area has had a 1.1, 1.4, and let's see. Okay, we can see that Finland, wow, Finland, 2.4 happened about 4 days ago. And there's all kinds of little earthquakes here, but Romania had one about 6 days ago. Let's go on down to Greece and Sicily. Italy has had some in the northern area. Let's look at them first. They had a 2.5 about 4 days ago, 2.2 3 days ago. Get on down to Italy. They have Stromboli that's actually still erupting. Naples area has the Campi volcano that is going off. Mount Etna is currently under warning again and had a small earthquake. Let's see if it'll let me get it. A 1.3 about 4 days ago. So Sicily is okay. It's just they're having very small earthquakes right now. But the volcano's definitely under warning right now. Southern part of Italy, 1.9, and it looks like a cluster right here. Yeah, it is. There's a cluster going on right there. They're small, but it's still a cluster. Greece, I really thought things were under control, but apparently it's getting out of control again this last week. This is Greece and also Crete. Crete that's down here. Excuse my nose. Where they're experiencing offshore earthquakes here in the area here. You also have some in the offshore here in Greece. Now the middle area is starting to get earthquakes all over again. It had stopped. Let's take a look at some of these. Wow, 1.7 about 14 minutes ago. Let's see here, 2.6 5 days ago. And let's see here, 2.3 about an hour ago. Yeah, they're getting earthquakes again in this area. 22 hours ago at 3.6 in the Crete area offshore at 1.9, and also in Crete at 2.8 21 hours ago. That was on land, but there's a cluster here that is right offshore in Crete, Greece. Now, as we go over, we will see that there's definitely earthquakes. Wow, so many anywhere I touch. Turkey has had a 2.9 about 5 days ago. Look like they've had quite a few earthquakes. Quite a few. 2.2 about 3 hours ago. And you see a red area here that was very recent, a 3.3 in Turkey. So Turkey is definitely starting to have earthquakes again. And Armenia, is this Armenia or Georgia? It's considered Turkey. Okay, just want to check to be on the safe side. They have had quite a few earthquakes. Now, this area here has lightened up a bit. Let's see how long it does, because normally it comes and it goes. It goes really crazy. Hopefully our tectonic plates aren't moving right now, because like I said, we are having a lot of earthquakes on ridges of the planet right now. There's a list that I have that I can actually bring up. Let's see if I can bring that up for you. Right now, when we look at the Earth, we're actually having earthquakes on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, where Reykjanes Ridge. I'll show you that. Carlsberg Ridge, Cocos Ridge, and that was over by Mexico. Eurasia Plate earthquake ridges, and also Pacific Rise, and that was over on the side of Mexico. Philippine plate earthquakes and Indo-Australia plate earthquakes. So we're having earthquakes on all the major ridges right now, just to let you know. Now, we do have some earthquakes that are in Afghanistan. Let's see, was that considered? Okay, that was still considered Turkey. Just want to make sure. We have some in Iran, quite a few earthquakes in Iran. I mean, quite a few. It looked like they had a cluster going on in this particular area right here. But it looks like the most recent one is this one right here, which was 3.4 that was 19 hours ago. That is not far from the actual, what you call convergent line boundary right here. Now, you also, like I said, you have earthquakes going on here. And look like they're a little bit higher. They're not in the same general area as normal. It looked like this happened within the last week, about 4 days ago, 6 days ago. Give you an idea, 3.9, 6 days ago. All right, India. Oh, wow, it's a confirmed earthquake. They have been getting so many unconfirmed earthquakes. Let's see what this one is. Okay, we had the 3.4 that happened about 7 hours ago, a little small baby cluster, 1.8, 18 hours ago, and another little baby one behind it. Looked like about 2 behind it. So India is doing okay. Nepal is doing okay. Let's see here. China area is doing okay. And let's see what this big one here is. We have a 4.6 5 hours ago that was in Burma. And then there's a larger one. 5.6 happened also in Burma. So, and then there was also a little small cluster over here in Burma. Multiple earthquakes. 2 hours ago was probably the most recent one that was about, there's a 2.7. It looked like there's one behind it that's very recent. And Thailand has had a 2.4. I'm not used to seeing Thailand have earthquakes. Burma's, but they border each other, but Burma had one there. Now we're going to get to the big business here. Burma, over offshore, had a 4.5, which was pretty big. Now we're going to check the Nicobar Islands. They're good to go. And we do see that there was an earthquake at 2.8 in Indonesia. That's pretty small for them. But looked like they had a huge one here. A 6.4 was offshore 7 days ago. And as you can see here on the convergent line, we see 28 minutes ago there was a 4.8 out there. Now they have multiple volcanoes The yellow ones are under unrest. The red ones are actually erupting. They have quite a few earthquakes that are erupting. Here's another one. And you can see that primarily that their earthquakes are offshore. 4.6 about 18 hours ago. And we see 16 hours ago at 3.2. See a cluster that's offshore that happened within the last 7 hours at 3.8. Another erupting volcano. And we can see here that this has calmed down a little bit in the Band of Sea. Nothing recent, unless this is considered, no, it's not. That wasn't considered that area. So it's calmed down in the Band of Sea. They were getting multiple earthquakes. As you can see here in Sulawesi, there's earthquakes. They've had multiple earthquakes here in this area. 5 hours ago, they had a 3.0. And if you continue up, you can see that the Philippines is definitely getting blasted. We'll do the Philippines in a second. Let's go ahead and look at Papua New Guinea. Looked like they had a huge one, but the smaller one is a 3.2. Let's see what this big one was, if it'll allow us to get it. Oh, it was larger than that. So there was a 3.6 and a 5.2 was offshore. That's the big one that they had in that area there. Another one they had was a 5.0 that was right on the shore. And hopefully there's no fatalities or anything going on with that one. Now, actually on the convergent line, where the plates actually go under each other or hit each other, collide with each other, there was a 5.1 in New Guinea. Vanuatu actually has had earthquakes, and it looks like they have an actual volcano that is under warning to erupt. So that's a new one there. Now, when we turn around and we keep going, there's one erupting there. Actually, once again, on the convergent line, we can see that the earthquakes are happening. This is where the plates, that's dealing with plates and stuff, guys. This is where things actually begin to collide with each other. And then you have the fault line here. Let's go ahead and raise up. You see that in Samoa Islands, you can see that they actually have one under warning. Okay, anything else going on out here? Just want to make sure. Okay, nothing else is going on. Guam must be okay. Alright, just checking on everything. Now, when we come down to New Zealand, New Zealand has had a time, I tell you, in the last week. There are actually offshore earthquakes that are happening. Some within a few days, some within a few hours ago. 1 hour ago, there was a 4.7, not too far from it, New Zealand. But look at New Zealand. It's just like it was the last time we reported. The only difference is, this is big announcement, Lake Taupo volcano is actually under unrest. It's been under unrest for about a week now. The earthquakes have calmed down. However, the volcano itself is actually under a status now. It's under unrest. So hopefully that does not decide to go off. Another volcano in the New Zealand area is the White Island volcano. It is also under unrest. We don't need both of those to go off. Now, their earthquakes, they are scattered throughout the whole entire North Island. Now, they're not large, but they still are earthquakes. They're in the ones and the twos right now. 2.3, you see some ones here, 1.5. But there's something going on to make these earthquakes go off. And I hope there's no magma movement that are causing these particular earthquakes. They had a 2.5 about 15 hours ago, and you can see that the North Island has nothing but earthquakes all around it. Now, the interesting thing is that the volcanoes aren't too far from the earthquakes. They're a little farther than what they look like. There we go. But there are some that are relatively close. I want to make sure I give you a realistic view. Now, if we go to the South Island of New Zealand, same thing. There are, in their case, they are having a lot more earthquakes than they normally do. Normally, the southern tip is what normally receive the earthquakes in this area. But once again, now they're starting to get a lot of earthquakes. So we need to keep our eyes out for New Zealand because we don't know what's going to happen or what's going on with New Zealand. Now, we can go ahead and go up to the Philippines. Philippines is getting hit. Look at this. Now, 3.8 about 2 days ago. And you have some offshore that's considered Indonesia. We keep going up. But look at this earthquake cluster right here. It's offshore and onshore. If you take a look at this, they are, I mean, this one just happened an hour ago at 2.5. And a lot of these are red. Anytime you see red, that's within the last 24 hours. Let's see here. We can get it closer to the Philippines. Here we go. This is what I was trying to get. A 4.8 happened just 4 hours ago offshore. So they're getting quite a few earthquakes. If I was to pull up a ledger on them, it would show a lot of earthquakes. Now, as we go up, let's take a look at our area here in Manila. Not too bad, but still a lot of concentrated earthquakes here and unrest volcano. This area has had so many earthquakes. I don't know what's going on. I just hope their magma tubes aren't over in that area that feed these volcanoes, because if that's the case, this is going to cause these to possibly become unrest. Now we could go to Taiwan. Taiwan looked like it's definitely calmed down. I mean, wow, they went through so much. A lot. And now they're down to about 2 earthquakes in the last 7 days, which is really, really, really good compared to what they were before. Now you have Japan. Japan has had their share of earthquakes. Look at that. A lot of them are actually close to volcanoes or either close to the convergent boundary line here. You have two erupting, you have one under unrest, you have all these offshore earthquakes. And like I said, when it comes to these, hopefully these are not along the magma tubes. I tried my best to find a magma tube type of map to give me an outline for the world, but I could not find one. I'll continue to look. That way we'll know if these earthquakes are actually on the magma tubes that would feed these particular earth volcanoes, because we don't know at this time. At least I don't know. I'm looking, but I have not found anything. Now in the Tokyo area, it looked like they did a big report on this particular earthquake that happened about 2 hours ago. There was a 4.3 that happened in Japan, Tokyo. People in Tokyo actually responded to that, stating that they felt it. And it looks like there's a new branch of earthquakes that are happening in this area. The 2.5 happened about 2 hours ago. There were 16 reports related to that particular earthquake. It just flashed on the screen. A lot of offshore earthquakes. You can see this all in this area. And these volcanoes are not active right now, thank goodness, except for this one's under warning to erupt. This one is actually erupting. So we must be in the Russian area. And also you have 2 under warning, another erupting. And you can see here in the Bering Straits that there are definitely earthquakes that are happening. Now there's quite a few people that are in the military. There's an ADAC. 9 hours ago there was a 3.2 ADAC, and hopefully they are okay in that area. And you can see one's unrest. Earthquakes happen around the volcano with the warning. Okay, you can see one's actually under unrest in that area there. Look at Alaska. Alaska is getting quite a few earthquakes. Let me stay a little closer so I can see them all. Yeah, all the way up here, they're getting earthquakes. This one happened about 26 minutes ago in Rampart, Alaska. That's way up there. There's a lot of military people that live in the Big Lake area, in the Willow area, Whittier area. You have Elmendorf Air Force Base in this particular area, and also Fort Richardson. They actually share the base. I was stationed there, but this is just letting you know that there's a lot of activity that's happening here. Anchorage is located right here, and if you go a little closer, you'll see exactly where the base is. The base is pretty much by the water. Is it by the water? Where are we at? Huh, went to school here. But I guess I gotta get a little closer to see it. Here it is, Elmendorf Air Force Base. So it's right here by the water. So they're not having earthquakes at that particular location, but and they're probably not being too affected because it looked like there's only one that happened in that area. That was a 1.4 about 5 days ago. But they're surrounded by a lot of little small micro earthquakes that are happening in that general area. Now, I don't know if they felt this, but there was a 5.1 8 hours ago in Alaska. But there's not any volcanoes except for this one right here that's under unrest that are actually reacting to anything. There's nothing going on, thank goodness. Now, we did mention about Canada, but Alberta, we didn't mention this one, is actually had a 2.1. So we just went around the globe, and it looked like there was one in Ottawa, and it was unconfirmed about 13 hours ago. I will repeat again, if you are living somewhere where there's unconfirmed earthquakes, you really need to. I'll make sure that I put that as the end uh, video and also the midway video that to remind you guys of that particular one. The link will also be in the description. You need to make sure you take a look at that particular video because I'm telling you, unconfirmed earthquakes are happening in Europe, they're happening in Africa, they're happening in the US, they're happening everywhere. As you can see, we just got clicked on to the Alabama one automatically because a report was updated because they felt it. But like I said, even Alabama, if you're in Alabama, I'm telling you now, if you're in Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, any of those particular areas, California even, California has had a lot of unconfirmed earthquakes. Make sure that you check out that video because you need to understand that even though they're unconfirmed, people are reporting what they're feeling, what they're experiencing. And if you were take the time out to see what they're experiencing, see if you're experiencing the same thing. And maybe you might be able to resolve something, but just ignoring it is not going to do anything. Unconfirmed earthquakes are not earthquakes. That's what they're telling you. They're not confirmed. Okay? But make sure you all stay safe. Like, share, and subscribe. And I hope this video gave you an insight. One thing that I did forget to do, like I always do, is I always forget Iceland. I just want to let you know that they are still having earthquakes right over here near the fracture zone and the ridge and the volcanic zone area. They're still getting earthquakes. And we're going to talk about that on the next video. We're going to talk about these ridges, these ridge earthquakes, because they are major. We don't know if this can lead to an actual pole shift because, believe it or not, the pole shift is projected for next year, early next year. And right about right now, we're starting to get a whole bunch of earthquakes that are along the tectonic plates, and that is a concern. All right? Like, share, subscribe. Stay safe, stay cool, and have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Ciao.